Greetings, Scott here, Cantaloupe Online to many people, and I'm back with another commentary on a subject that's important to me and hopefully some other people, maybe yourself. If you know anybody who's been through the criminal justice system, I unfortunately have a bit of experience with that myself personally. Nothing that has prevented me from being, happy and successful, but a lot of people aren't so lucky, and I did happen to have time to think about how it all works, so to speak. And I'd like to mention a couple of things that I don't believe are common knowledge and that a lot of people would benefit from just if it were common knowledge. One of those things where if it was more widely known how the system works, it might get fixed a lot faster, kind of thing. But anyway, there is a problem. It needs to be fixed. And what it boils down to is a problem we've had since it was created, almost 250 years ago now, when this country, America, was created in the fight for independence against the British. Not to get into too much detail, but we had a lot of really brilliant thinkers who helped architect this country and its documents, its systems, and we got off to a really good start, but a lot of the ideas weren't completely fleshed out, so to speak. They weren't informed. They were contradictory, and they lacked insight. That's really the biggest challenge that I see. That the main one being, as I mentioned, our criminal justice system has a couple of show-stopping bugs or flaws, if you will. Not to drone on and on about it, but a large part of the reason early European immigrants came to the American continent was to escape religious persecution, corruption by the monarchies in Europe at the time, from my understanding, from what I've learned about European history and American history. And the reason this is relevant is they reacted, or perhaps even overreacted, to a situation involving the court systems of Europe at that time. And if you read your history books, it'll tell you that the courts and the monarchy at the time, the King of England, if you will, were one and the same. The courts were agents of the king and the kingdom, and there was no real justice. It was unfair, it was rigged, and a lot of people were getting hurt because of it. A lot of innocent people were getting hurt. And that's always going to inspire rebellion or revolt or revolution or whatever. And it just so coincided with the Atlantic crossings and all that stuff. Not to digress too far, but the relevancy again is that their overreaction to that system involved getting rid of judges, to cut to the chase. They decided that corruption could not be prevented or eliminated. They didn't really understand it, it looks like to me. They didn't ever really wrap their heads around what causes corruption or how to prevent it completely. So they decided the next best thing is to make judges obsolete, and that is what we still have, whether you realize it or not. We do not have judges in a judgment capacity. We have book interpreters, and to make that perfectly clear, we have literal law books, behavioral codes. We have national codes, state codes, city codes, all kinds of laws, and there's thousands and thousands of them now. Just about anything you can imagine is illegal, and here's your problem. When you create a document or a book of law, that is, you try to codify behavior, you end up with a symbolic system. Now, try not to get too technical, but when you make something symbolic, it becomes subject to interpretation. So now we need people to interpret the law, and this is not an accident. The reason this continues is so that the interpretation will always favor the ruling administrators. I'll say that again. When you have symbolic law, it must be interpreted, and herein lies an opportunity for the ruling parties, whoever they are, to make sure that their employees, the judges in the courts, never interpret the law against their own employers. It's kind of a nice little system they have. But what it doesn't do is provide justice. And here's your problem. You have symbols, legal symbols in the form of language based on precedent that fit all manner of behaviors, of events, actions, and decisions which aren't necessarily criminal. So you're starting to see where this goes. You begin potentially calling good behavior or inconvenient behavior, whether it's criminal or not. Now here's the show-stopping bug. Symbolic rules, that is, we don't have an autonomous judge who has no special interests. We have a book interpreter with a very real paycheck and bills to pay, interpreting the law in a way that is convenient for his employer. That's what we have. That is the opposite of due process. And I don't want to get too much into justice and what it actually is, but due process, that is investigating, figuring out what's fair, correcting unfairness, and giving people what they deserve, one way or the other, that's justice, and you cannot have it without due process. Precedent aims to replace due process. It's a substitute. That is, when we write a rule in a book, it aims to automate that. It aims to make due process obsolete by way of making it symbolic. And we're saying now, if the symbol fits the action, whether the action was motivated by a good spirit, whether the effect was good, we don't care. And we just hope that nobody abuses that ability to interpret the rule. So what do we have? We end up with a court system and a judicial system that will never expose administrators to justice, is what we have. Secondly, we have anyone who speaks against the administration, who is inconvenient for any reason in the eyes of the administration, being prosecuted, whether they committed a crime or not, by design. Okay? So that's a lot to chew on. What's an alternative? What's the solution? The better system is to have actual judges who aren't beholden to special interests. That's a lot to ask, and it's especially a lot to ask because it exposes administrators to justice themselves, which obviously is not something they're going to want. So here's your problem. Your elected officials would like to preserve their freedom. Everyone wants freedom. They don't want to risk their hides or their jobs or their families, of course. And it's kind of a nice little gig they got going on, but nobody's aware of it. And here's my problem. Whether it's right or wrong, if people are being lied to and we're continuing just out of ignorance, I see that as a problem. No matter what we're doing. So that's why I'm making this video. Something to think about. Consider rules would be better as guidelines. Perhaps not a rule book or a law book, but some kind of primer as far as what's expected, and the courts need to be free to disagree with it. Right now they're not. Right now it's illegal for the court to rule against what the book of law says. Okay, this is a fact. Any lawyer will tell you this. They tell you in every trial, actually. Every jury is instructed they cannot go against what the law says. So it's a big problem. It ends up punishing good behavior, potentially, and in reality. I've said more than enough. Reach out to me at whitehotrobot@gmail.com with any comments or questions, and I thank you sincerely for your time. Have a good day.